for May 14th. Attendance at the beginning of the meeting is 100% with Councillor Jolly virtual. And we only really have one agenda item for this. So I need a motion, I'm assuming. Councillor Mackay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Mike, go ahead.
Oh.
The May 14th, 2024 special city council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Had I known he was going to butcher, I would not.
Third time lucky.
Okay, call for the vote.
He's even trying to vote.
Unanimous. I'm going to turn it straight over to Mr. Schick. I'm liking the fact you're wearing orange.
Here we go. All right.
Take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning, council. So there's no formal presentation today on this. However, so background information is that administration has received a development application for associated with the Belrose Composite High School site, where they're looking to do a modernization and expansion to the site. Essentially, at the end of the day, what it is we administration holds typical practice in regards to performing traffic impact assessments. And under normal circumstances, any kind of on-site or off-site improvements are on the onus of the development, the applicant itself, to perform any improvements that are associated with recognize better traffic management or accommodation. And with that being said, we typically then add a permitted condition to the actual development permit itself that gives maybe the timeframes and associates the specific scope or whatnot associated with the improvements to be made. In this case, through discussions, collaboration with the applicant, which is Alberta Infrastructure, in coordination and collaboration with the public school boards for the Belrose High site, there's been concerns and kind of response back in regards to the impacts of such a condition. And so under normal practice, of course, administration has the recommendation right now in front of council to uphold the standard practice, but we also recognize our relationship and of course the opportunities that we have with Alberta Infrastructure. And so there's kind of two considerations in front of council for possible. The recommendation again is up in line with our kind of standard practices, which would enable administration to maintain the condition that the developer would be mandated to perform the improvements to the site. And an alternative is before council as well to consider essentially deviating from that standard practice. In which case then the result of that would be that administration would monitor the area, recognize, of course, we'd have the TIA, the traffic impact assessment, on file and on record, acknowledging what improvements are anticipated. But we would monitor the area and be in a position then to be creating a project charter added to a program and essentially be in front of council in the future with budget requests from the improvements. And that's really it for the background.
So you would need to come to council for budget for this. It wouldn't be in some other like line item in our budget of transportation.
Yeah, so if I could add some context perhaps holistically. So the choice today essentially is whether the permit is issued with
or without conditions.
Okay. The updated, and Donnie or Dean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still waiting for the updated traffic impact assessment. And so the scope and scale, though we believe we know what it is, we don't know. And so administration would have to do their homework if the determination was that the city was going to take this on and then come back to you with those details in terms of cost, timelines, et cetera. Maybe just in terms of a little wider context, as Dean noted, Alberta Infrastructure is in fact the proponent. So there have been some engagements with Alberta Infrastructure, both from a city perspective, where they reiterated government of Alberta's policy that they don't do work related to servicing, capital S servicing of any type related to either new or improvements to schools. That is their policy. It's not written down anywhere, but that is their policy that they maintain. A quick azimuth or horizon scan of partners in and around the region reveal the exact same scenarios as they played out in their engagements as well. And so I would also highlight that I believe it was about a year ago, I think it was Lethbridge put forward an Alberta Municipalities Resolution to encourage the government of Alberta to provide servicing infrastructure funding with school projects. There are no updates to report either from Ad Unis or out of the province on that particular front. So that's the context I would offer from a provincial perspective. And it's obviously in 180-degree polar alignment with City of St. Albert's approach on this, which is growth pace for them.
So you need the motion to deviate from standard practice.
That is correct.
And back to the budget. So you said we would need potentially future budget approval for whatever improvements are deemed necessary. If that budget doesn't come, then we're just dealing with a Dougal of traffic right in front of the school. We get the complaints from residents. Yeah.
As with anything, I would hope that administration is in a place that we have documented evidence-based approaches to the improvements. So it would be a well-documented kind of story as to tell the operational considerations and the impacts, and then it'd be during budget deliberation to consider.
Yeah.
Me.
Could be a different council. And they might not be willing to pay for that. So go ahead, Wes.
Well, I'll state right up front, I got a soft spot in my heart for Belrose only because my son went there, graduated there. And I'm also a resident of Deer Ridge, so I go by Belrose all the time. I don't like going there when school lets out. So in any case, but my question is this is, so I get from the packages about a $350,000 tap. Is that what we're looking at?
Again, unfortunately, we don't know a defined scope, but this would be an estimate, assuming that we assume that at some site, there's going to be some signalization. And so we kind of use that as an estimate in terms of to say it's likely at one site, not multiple. And so that's what we're estimating. But that'll be better defined and documented with the updated TIA.
So I like policy because it allows us to treat everybody equitably. Equitably doesn't always mean the same, but is it so? If we stood our ground and Alberta Infrastructure and the school board had to come up with the $350K, does that put the whole program at risk? Like what's the implications here? Do we know?
Corrected by the experts, but the message that was conveyed to me out of Alberta Infrastructure was that at this point in time, they're not inclined to accept a permit on it. I don't know how necessarily that works. So yes, there is the potential that this could delay by a year, presumably if not longer, the project. Donnie or you, nothing on that particular front?
So that's been the message that's been received, is that the additional request for funding could put the project at risk, if not delay.
So I did endeavor to sort of up the ante a little bit by trying to get a meeting with the ADM or DM on that particular front, and sadly didn't happen in the time.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't surprise
Oh,
me.
sorry.
No, I'm done. I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, on the backgrounder, it provided, it was mentioned that in the original subcontractor that was hired by Alberta Infrastructure actually included that in their original plan, did they not? The traffic?
Well, they did a traffic impact assessment. that
Right.
Supplements the actual development permit application. That's standard practice across. And it documents what the traffic impacts are from the proposed development and what possible improvements would be necessary to support said growth. And that's what's been provided to date. So there hasn't been anything in terms of like actual tangible physical improvements on sites or anything like that. It's just purely been a report to supplement the permit application.
That report that was produced in the fall of 2023, the city wanted some changes to it, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's
So in that report, did it not say that it was included in the costing of the project?
No. I think it's a statutory report that is required
on development
to
application.
submit your application, right?
And we haven't received that updated. So we had a draft that was provided to us. And it went through a list of conditions and recommendations and considerations. And then we have questions, and this happens quite often through the process, is we may request additional clarity or detail, which they haven't provided us an updated TIA yet. So
So it was completed in fall of 2023, and now we're on a rush right now, asking for a report that should have been given a long time ago. Is really,
Yeah, I would say, I would call it to say that the report right now is 75% complete in terms of its like the information that's been shared. It's really getting into now some details. We asked for additional analysis, but at the end of the day, as an example, it provides a recommendation to address the traffic impacts. We asked for some clarity and maybe analysis of a separate alternative improvement that we believe would be a better result. And so there's still an improvement. There's still conditions associated, coming recommendations out of the TIA for improvements. And that's where the funding and the possible impacts are. So we don't anticipate that it really alleviates any form of unnecessary improvements. Or on the other side to that coin would be come to greater magnitude beyond what we really expect for this site. We anticipate something, just better detail and better definition of scope is what we're anticipating out of the TIA.
so it was the city that had to request that report that kind of sat there since fall of 2023 then.
Sorry, yeah, for timeline, for clarity, it's the report is dated September 2023, but it was received by administration the first week of April, I believe April 4th or 5th, in and around that time frame.
Further, did the report indicate improvements at Lacombe Drive and Giroux? And you're now looking at actually and signal right at Belrose, so left up, right?
That's correct, yeah,
You think that's the better solution, and the report said something different, right?
that's correct.
Okay, yeah. What were the improvements at Lacombe Drive and Giroux?
Essentially, that would be an upgrade to the traffic control to a fully signalized intersection. At that, even with that improvement, there's pros and cons to any improvement.
Okay.
From a city perspective, we gain the benefit of, a signalized intersection helps maybe the broader area, including residents of Deer Ridge as well as Lacombe Lake. In terms of though managing the traffic, the site itself doesn't really alleviate itself from current restrictions. They have restrictions in terms of left turn movements out of the site during peak periods. And so that improvement doesn't really resolve that issue. It's still, so we're just looking for that analysis to say, well, what happens instead if you do these improvements more so to the site, you gain better traffic management specific to that site.
I would see that just forcing kids to turn right out of Belrose into either Lacombe or Deer Ridge.
The result is a U-turn somewhere.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what we're trying to look at. And say, well, how do you alleviate that as a traffic management issue in itself?
Does that answer the question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
You have some? Okay.
Yeah, you partly asked my question, but at the same time, do we have any actual diagrams of what we're looking at here? Or is it just more just traffic signal and we don't, there's no actual structural changes to like the front of Belrose School itself or anything in anything like that, correct?
We haven't seen any actual drawings associated with the site. They have their plans. They're planning, I believe they're in a process here of anticipating tendering and whatnot. So they have to have their plans kind of prepared. And so there would be some sites. There was some recommendations of some modification to the overall
Yeah, what about,
parking layout.
yeah, the parking, that was what I was gonna go. Is there any really big changes to the parking or the front of the school?
Nothing that I've seen significant and
No bus turnout like we have at Polkane, right? It's still
Yeah.
right on the
well,
street.
it's still on street. And this is some where we're looking for some clarity as well, because there was some recommendations in the TIA that we haven't confirmed necessarily in design or anything. So it's one of two things. You either engineer for the structure for the added capacity or the use, or you have management systems in place to schedule, as an example, the buses or other practices to resolve the potential issues.
And if the TIA asked for a bus lane, like we have at Polkane or other schools, that would be on site, would it not?
That would be purely on site.
That would be covered by the infrastructure grant from the province. Okay.
Yeah, I would just caution that would involve design and a reallocation of monies, probably equates to a significant delay in terms of the project. Right, because right now they've got the money programmed into a solution. As soon as you change the solution, then that money needs to be
I
profiled.
thought the TIA might change the solution. Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
It does alternative one that's in our briefing package then would allow administration to grant I just asking for clarification, would allow us to grant the development permit. That would meet the government's requirements that are managing the project to proceed, because right now they're saying they won't proceed with caveats on the development permit. It would allow us to remove those or not have them, not remove them. It would allow Alberta Infrastructure then to say, okay, St. Albert hasn't imposed any specific development permit requirements for traffic improvements. And it would also allow us to have time, us, the city, to look at all the things we've just talked about, where the signal would go, U-turns, traffic, left turns, all the things that we need more analysis of and time to do that work. The project would proceed. Alberta Infrastructure would have the green light, no caveats on the permit. And we would come back with a solution that whatever it might be, whether it's at Dunfield or out of the parking lot, all of those things that would allow us to do that work and come back with a proposed budget for that work to take place. Is that what alternative one is proposing?
That's correct.
Yeah, but I would just, again, alternative one is a tacit or essentially an acceptance that nobody else is going to make those improvements, right?
Yeah.
What's the financial burden on the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the other question?
Sort of, and I think you might have asked it, but I'm gonna ask it my way anyway.
Yeah, because I don't understand that way yet.
If we agree to pay for the upgrades, do we get to define what the upgrade is?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think as with any development site, if there were off-site access, where there's the property line and the road right of way, and there's the traffic management considerations, there'd be communication between the school board. We have communication stronger since 2014 with Safe Journeys to School, with any school site where we collaborate and coordinate and communicate. And this would be the same thing, but to be honest, now it would be looking at, we as the city look at a network, not individual best management for a single site. So we would take into consideration maybe a broader sense, while at the same time, recognizing the direct impacts to individual areas.
Shannon?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So with the TAA, does it show that we basically need to do those improvements no matter what? Like they have 1,000 students there now. So with 1,000 students, are we showing that we would probably do those improvements anyway? Or surely if we get 1,300 at max capacity again, would we require that? Or is it only if we get 1,600?
So I would maybe not use a strong verb. So it's anticipated those improvements would be required. A TIA again is making some assumptions. It applies trip generation based on land use. So the good thing about, in some developments, it's a foregone conclusion to say this is going to be an impact, and 95% of the time it's going to be very accurate and the improvements are beneficial. Similar in this case, we anticipate these improvements to be required. But it's not a case of if the construction finished in 2026 opening day, these improvements have to be in play. There's a growth side to this where the school is going to, as they expand or they have expanded and additional students registration will occur and traffic impacts will result. And that's what the benefit of monitoring and kind of addressing it, because there's assumptions not only with the school site traffic, but background traffic. So there's in a TIA, we make assumptions of growth with Rue Road in this case. And so everything kind of has to come in line. It doesn't fall purely on the shoulders of a single site development.
If I'm hearing you correctly, it's a matter of like when we might need this. Like it might be 10 years, but at the point we will hit a threshold where we will have to do these improvements. The other thing was with the Safe Journeys to School you mentioned, how much money did we spend on that for the Belrose site ish? Do you know? Like I don't remember doing any improvements for the Belrose site for Safe Journeys to School.
Oh, there was very minimal. We added some signage in terms of the loading area. We worked with the school and helped in some of the sign placement with the restrictions of the left turn accesses during peak periods for the school time. But no redesigns or added construction beyond that, so the soft measures of signage.
Thinking some of the schools had quite a bit done to them. Okay. So, because I'm just thinking of like, this might be something that would have fallen into Safe Journeys to School had they had the threshold met at that time. Would that be?
Yeah, I think it was, I mean, Safe Journeys was very site specific for the improvements, and a lot of improvements were around the elementary schools, the younger age schools, in terms of increased pedestrian safety. In this case, a lot of it isn't around pedestrian safety, it's around traffic management coming and going from the site. So it's a little bit different in regards to the improvements.
The thing is, so I know the recommendation is just taking this information, which is not to give the money. So with that thought process, what would be the opportunities of not doing? We know the negative effects of not doing this. Is there a benefit to actually not doing this that we know of?
Maybe I can offer it. I think it's consistency across the development landscape and sale.
Okay. But I mean, as far as like the school goes and to address the school. I don't know, I know the school boards are here. I don't know if there's, I don't know if there's like, okay, don't do this. This is our plan B, is what I'm trying to figure out. Or if there's like something else where. I don't know.
Not to speak out of turn, but my assumption would be this, is that no improvements were to occur. If, say, the conditions were maintained, well, then the project is that. Let's take that out of the equation and say that the improvements are just not performed by anyone. At some point in time, with any increased traffic and demands, there's going to be some form of improvements happening somewhere. And it'll be documented either through volumes and operational impacts, safety impacts, like reported motor vehicle collisions, reports of concerns that are probably going to go through the school site to the school board, to the city and transportation to receive these concerns, reports of near misses and whatnot. And so some form of action would take place, as we typically do.
Okay. You got another one?
No, if you're done.
Yeah, I can be done.
No, you don't have to.
Well, I just see if you figure it out, but I want.
I'm probably.
We got 7 minutes.
Okay, I got 7 minutes, so I'll take up 7 seconds here. So, yeah, I mean, just to go back, so the dollar figure between 300 and 350, if it happens this year or 5 years from now, it's gonna stay relatively the same. And then that would be part of the budget process, or is that part of like a reserve that we would use that dollars from?
What our intent would likely be is we would put it in our existing program as RMR for Transportation Systems Management, which is purely in line with the scope of work. So it's with that charter, and we would just again create the business, give the background and the whys and hows and timelines, and make sure we capture that.
It wouldn't necessarily have to be in this budget year. It could be whenever we needed that, from based on one of your answers, right? So it could be 26, 27 or something like that.
That's correct. And I would just throw it out there too, that in the event, because we've had this in the past where there's been somewhat of an emergent request, then it would be a walk-on budget request to say we're dealing with this existing kind of circumstance and we're looking to alleviate it or address it. It'd be a separate process.
And it's lights we're talking about here. We're not talking a traffic circle.
Maybe I could ask Adrian, is the back of it, the current conditions are the one option for conditional. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Kelly has another question.
Just one last question. When you do the traffic assessment, is it projecting that what percentage of the students actually drive to school? If less students, are all taking cars, the problem doesn't exist, right? So how's that calculated?
So it's an Institute for Technical Engineering there, where they apply trip rates associated with a land use. So whether it's a high school, a commercial building, or anything like that, there's some assumptions that are being made. And they just apply that rate with a number of students. And then there's a percentage that is taken off, assuming like pickup, drop off, school transportation, all of these kind of calculations are put into it as well.
So everyone driving to school is essentially the problem everywhere.
If that's the case, right? I mean, it's ultimately traffic flow based on an increase. So some kids will drive. There's not a material increase in parking as part of the project, the way I understand it. But you get, we'll pick a number, 300 to 600 kids based on the increased capacity. Some will be dropped off and picked up by parents, right? Some will bike, some will take buses. That's increased traffic at a specific node at specific time of days, which is concerned.
Well, and that's an excellent point to say is in the site, there's only so much parking. So that's the one benefit here is to recognize over time and monitor it because site access addresses obviously the site parking. But even with an increase in trips or vehicle volumes, that doesn't mean that there's direct site increase. It could be surrounding area and whatnot as well. So or increased school bus traffic. However, again, these management systems, if we see mode shifts in the future, it's hard.
That rate that they use for the calculations for the use of a high school, is that a national rate or is it specific to St. Albert?
It's in industry practice.
Industry practice. So the fact that St. Albert offers free transit for students could maybe.
It could influence it,
But-
but it's not recognized in the
It's not
calculation.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is what I'm trying to figure out is, and I guess I'm looking at, not or not, but we've continually heard that there's a shortage of space for high school students because there's a bunch of students that are moving up and they're getting older every single year. And so this is only going to give us 300 more students in the public school system. And so I don't know if you have the answers or if the school system has this, the superintendent, et cetera, has the answers, but is this solution of just, I know that was what was proposed, but at the time it was proposed, there wasn't another school site available for high school. That has since changed. Is it still the solution that the school boards would like to see move forward is to expand on this? And that's why I don't know if they can answer. If you have the answer.
Crimson and has talked to Bill, I've talked to Kim. I
Yeah.
think what I heard is Volcane was about 43-ish millions. So you could build a new school with this, but then you don't have the money to improve Belrose, which needs a significant amount of money for toilets, I heard, and things like that. So they would need an from Alberta Infrastructure to fix Belrose and then another lot of money to do a new school.
So what we're hearing is that today, this is still the solution that the school board prefer to move forward with to also address their capacity issues. Is that fair to say?
That's certainly yes. And in
Okay.
fairness, the school board, I believe, did reach out to Alberta Infrastructure to discuss the potential to reprofile that money.
Okay.
As noted, there's the demands of capacity and also the aging infrastructure at Belrose. There are inflationary pressures since Paul Kane was scheduled to be built. And then the last piece is, I believe Alberta Infrastructure's response was there's no guarantee that one can easily equate to the other.
Okay.
I think ideally, you would like money to improve Belrose and build a new school.
Yes.
That would be the ideal.
But today, this is
60 million.
today, though, this is a solution that we'd like to see move forward as part of like working with the school boards is this site to be improved to address, this is how we're gonna handle it, is what they would prefer.
I mean, today's the sure thing.
Oh, yeah, sometimes.
There's a gun to our head right now.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, so before we sat down, so essentially we have choice of except for information, which means you're going to issue a conditional permit, or the alternative one, which means there is no conditions and the city will assume all traffic upgrades. Mike Killick indicated that he would put forward alternative one. So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. So I'll just read alternative one into the record, that administration be authorized to perform off-site improvements and proceed with local roadway improvements on Giroux Road adjacent to Belrose Composite High School, with the requirement that administration present the cost of supporting the road improvements to council prior to undertaking the work.
Accept that, go ahead.
So I think we're all feeling a little bit of a time crunch here. So rather than accepting the report for information, I think we need to make a decision in a way that allows us to move forward. There's known traffic congestion in that area already. I'd love to stick to policy that growth pays for growth, but even as Councillor Broad had said, there's traffic challenges there on the best days. I also personally avoid that area at 12:30 and 2:30 when the kids get out from their morning session or their afternoon session. There's existing traffic challenges there already. I think as we've all mentioned, this is not just about, the 6 extra parking spots or 10 extra parking spots. Kids will continue to drive cars, but there's also challenges with the number of buses. There's all the background volume of traffic. There's the traffic going into Lacombe Drive and Dunfield. There's safety issues with U-turns, whether they're legal or illegal. There's signage up that says no U-turns, but I frequently see those ignored. So it's potentially, I hate to say this, but it's kind of an accident waiting to happen. With this alternative motion, it allows us to move forward, issue a development permit with no conditions on it. That improves our relationship with Alberta Infrastructure, the provincial government that have made announcements that school has got the funding, continues to allow us to have a good relationship with the school board, and all the residents that both local and not, because there is buses and lots of parents dropping kids off and driving. But it allows us to continue moving forward, this project moving forward in a positive way, and it sends a clear signal to the residents and users of that school. So with all those thoughts in mind, and recognition that this motion does mean 2 big things. Number one, it puts the workload on administration to come up with a plan as to how to best address it. We don't know what that looks like today. As we've heard, there are many options, but it does allow administration to go away and figure out the best solution. But it also comes with some strings attached for budget, and that does mean that somewhere between 300 and maybe 350 million. Or 1,000. Yeah, I'm thinking wrong. Big numbers here. I'm thinking about the score of the game. We're gonna score 1 million point. $350,000. So it does come with some onus on the city that will have to be looked at in future budgets. Gives us the time to come up with that answer, the right answer, and the right dollar amount for a solution. But I think this is the right way to keep the project moving and sends the right signal to both government and the school board. So I'm happy to support alternative 1, knowing going in with our eyes wide open in terms of potential budget impact.
Thank you, Councillor Tillich, for, all your good points about it. But the fact is, administration put forward that, we're veering from policy in doing this. And they also mentioned that if the need comes to be, it will be addressed down the road. So the problem I have is that through Alberta Infrastructure, it's delay, and then rush, give us money. That's the difficult part for me, that, it wasn't, we're here, time for the work to start. And we should have had information like since last fall that wasn't handed over to the city. So, and I think it sets a precedent for people to delay or not get things in correct order to the city, and it puts a pressure on the city to have to come up with money at the drop of a hat kind of things. So I won't be supporting.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this. I think that, as we've heard from administration, it's not if, but when. And if we delay this, we will still have to eventually do the improvements, but we will not have a modernized school as a result. And so this is about an opportunity being lost, and it'll be very difficult to get that money back again. If we happen to do the upgrades in 5 years, then we have to ask for it again. There's no guarantee that we'll ever get that money again. So we just have to recognize the fact that, yeah, it's unfortunate that, we're the ones who are doing this, that the school has to be built out, but we've also put a lot of money into a lot of schools when we looked at safe journeys to school. And that was not a debate about whether or not we want to do it. It was about safety, and these improvements are also about safety. So I think that the teenagers in our society need to have the same level of concern about their safety as the kids in elementary school. So it's about if or when, and this is the time we need to do it. That's it. Thank you. Joel?
I'll follow up on that and I'll support that. I mean, just for almost the reasons, the exact same reasons that you've outlined. But I was a member of the Safe Journeys to School Committee, and we actually did put a great deal of dollars into doing those improvements. And obviously that was on our expense count. So plus also this gives us an opportunity to look at that whole Giroux corridor that starts in that area. Like, I mean, we've got Northridge, we've got Hogan, we've got some other challenges. I think rather than, and I'm not saying it would be piecemeal if we had to do it right now, but at the same time, this allows us to scope out the actual entire length of Giroux and deal with some of the concerns that we're now starting to see with the growth out of Choureau and some of our newer areas that are starting to impact some of the traffic flow. So I'm going to support this at this time.
Good, Wes?
Make some comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, the argument has been spoken by the councillors already. My heart is with Councillor Bermansky, and yet the reality, I think, is on the other side. The thing that bothers me is that this is the way that the provincial government works. They hold this carrot out there and then they say, yeah, but you know, we're not going to do this. And if you don't come to the table, screw you. We'll give you the project. And pardon my language, it might have been a little coarse for council, but that's how I feel sometimes when we get downloaded on by the province. Now, having said that, are we going to say no to a school improvement? Are we going to say no to brand new revitalized Belrose, school that has treated my family so well? I don't think so. Anyway, I'm going to stop there.
Councillor Jolly?
Thank you. Like Councillor Broadhead, I could probably use some pretty harsh words for really the province backing us into a corner like this. We need the improvements. We're essentially paying not only for a provincial responsibility, but also for neighboring municipalities. It's not just St. Albert young people who are attending Belrose. This is a regional school, and St. Albert's being expected to foot the bill. So I'm supporting this, but really frustrated.
Same thing.
Ditto.
Yeah, ditto. I've lamented with Mr. Fletcher that Bill 20 is telling us to stay in our lane.
Mhm.
To not do anything when it comes to healthcare or education, but here we are spending taxpayer dollars. We would never give a permit like this to a private developer, ever. This growth should pay for growth. But I'm going to support it. And, you know, at the same time, we all pay education property taxes, even if you don't have kids in school. We get the argument all the time. The kids that are graduating from Belrose, these extra 275 or 300, someday might be our grandkids pediatrician or something. Like, we all benefit from these kids going to school. So we will never leave the kids of St. Albert, without adequate schooling, and we'll do our best to make sure it happens. So completely fine with funding this, but can we just add this to the download list? You know, I'm sure we have a running list of stuff the provincial government has downloaded on us.
It's going to take 119,000.
The 119 from St. Albert Trail, exactly. So, you know, when they complain that our taxes are going up and we're not being fiscally responsible, a big chunk of it is their lack of support for us. So, anything to close, Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to close, I like that this has been brought forward as a separate council motion to look at. Although there's always a risk of precedent setting, as Councillor Bermansky articulated, hopefully that this is a separate council motion. We've had a separate debate on it. As administration has said, it allows us to look at this as a one-off and does not set a precedent. If that had not been in there and we had dealt with this just as, you know, general funding decision, I think that could have set a far more dangerous precedent. But with that caveat, it allows us to kind of ring fence this one decision and hopefully minimize any future impacts. But likewise with everybody else, I share the frustration of provincial downloading and leaving things to the last minute. But I think we need to move forward and give the green light on this one.
All right, call for the vote. That one passes by a majority with Councillor Brometsky opposed. And before I adjourn this, I just wanna, I don't know, apologies to this public school board or in order, like, we could have made this decision last Tuesday, but we were presented with very little, like, quick information. We wanted a week to think about it, so we called this special council meeting. And in the meantime, we're doing Alberta infrastructure and I'm seeing what we can do to fix it, but we ended up in the exact same place as you had suggested last Tuesday, and appreciate the time for council to really consider that. So meeting adjourned. Log out of this one, Natalie, and go to the other Zoom link, and we will start our SCOW meeting 5 minutes.